So my first question is, what is your idea about Western and Muslim consciousness today?
I think I would start by suggesting that the use of terminology, particularly the whole issue of the West versus the East, is portrayed most of the time as a conflict. And we also in the Middle East, and I would also consider in Turkey to a certain extent, there is a tendency towards believe in a Western conspiracy, which is in part, you can see some evidences of that. But you cannot justify all our problems and all our shortcomings due to such conspiracy or such focus from the West to diminish our efforts to excel and to have a good spot in the either the global stage or the overall human project that we are living. So what I am calling for is that knowing our history, knowing our past, knowing the knowledge that we had contributed in what can be called the golden age of the Islamic civilization, I think we need to have a more confidence in ourselves, confidence in the new generations, confidence in our intellectuals, confidence in our faith, and to use all of this energy coming from this belief and this confidence to have a more like a rational dialogue with the West. Because I think also there are a lot of positive issues about the West. The quality of education, I would say, the quality of research, the idea of questioning things, the idea of enjoying teamwork and enjoying being collective and gaining a lot of achievements because of the ability to know the strengths of each individual and then get all of these strengths together and weave it together in a very holistic manner, and therefore they were able to achieve a lot of excellent achievements in different fields. So I think the challenge that we are facing in our modern time now, and I'm saying our means the Muslim / Arab / Middle Eastern / Turkish, you name it. I think the fundamental challenge is that we need to go beyond the idea of the conspiracy. Because the beauty of this idea, the conspiracy, is that you don't need to do anything. Because whenever you have any kind of failure, you would say that, well, this is because of the West, this is because of the Americans, this is because of I don't know what. So you keep on blaming somebody else, as opposed to look deep into your actions, into your potentials, into your problems, and to examine in a very honest manner, do we really failed because of the conspiracy orchestrated by the West, or we also need to blame ourselves? What kind of freedom we are giving to our people? What kind of true, credible democracy that we are achieving in the Islamic world today? The role of education, the role of research, the role of community awareness, how we create platforms for people to talk about their issues and problems and to share ideas. So I think, to make a long story short, I am very excited about a new form of dialogue where the West should appreciate that this is a considerable part of the world and they have outstanding previous contribution. And also we need to acknowledge that the West also has a lot of positive contributions to offer.
So the solution is, from what I understand from your words, to identify the West as West tells us. You know, the West says, I am an apple, we are saying you're not an apple, you're a banana. We cannot say that, right? Knowing the other as it is, and the West should know us as we are. So I think the problem today we are facing is we don't know West as it is, because when we say kuffar, for example, the West doesn't understand anything, just infidels, that doesn't mean anything. Or when they say Easterners, the rest of the world, we don't understand anything. So there is a problem in identifying the other.
Right.
So if we solve it, the clash between our civilizations, the problems within each other. For example, if I meet a Westerner, I have a problem identifying him. Sometimes I'm representing Muslims now. Sometimes I have an inferiority complex.
Okay.
I think that he's very genius. He's very rational. His logic on top,
Yeah.
But it's not like that. The case
Right,
is,
right.
they are humans like us.
Absolutely.
But because we don't know their experience, their history of thought, how they became like this, how they, for example, after the modernity, they had a feeling to control the nature. Controlling the nature doesn't mean anything for us, because we know the control of the nature is in the God's hands, the Allah's hands. Allah controls everything. He's the controller. So I think the main problem we need to face and get over is identifying. What do you think about it?
Well, again, I will go to the issue of terminology, the meaning of words, because the meaning of words is very crucial in discussing these kind of issues. So, number one, it seems to me that also we need to go beyond prototypes, because as you rightly stated, in a lot of times in the East, we have a preconception that whoever coming from the West is a genius, is an excellent person, is an outstanding contributor, and therefore we have to listen to him or to her, and we have to totally surrender to what they're saying. Well, number one, this is a fallacy, because as you again rightly stated, these are human beings, and they have different qualities, and they have the very rich tapestry of people, the rich and the poor, the believers and unbelievers, the kind people and the evil people, and so on and so forth. Now, I think the excellent metaphor that I would use to invite myself and you and our colleagues is to again consider the other as an entity that you need to understand, as opposed to you need him to surrender to you, or vice versa. I think a fundamental problem that we faced for a long time was related to considering the dialogue between the East and the West as a battlefield. Battlefield in the sense that we have to end up with a winner, right? I think that was also a fundamental problem, a huge mistake, because if you really want to get to know the other, this is in itself a process of acknowledgement. This is in itself a process of valuing the presence of this person. Now, if you value the presence of this person, you don't need him to be a duplication of you, right? So I think the metaphor of the melting pot, that all of us should be in a melting pot, mix it together, and we'll end up with something very unified, I don't think it fits our time now. I would argue that the best metaphor for our time now is like a salad bowl, in the sense that you have a mix of components, but still you can distinguish each of those components. You can see the cucumber, you can see the tomatoes, you can see the lettuce, you can see pieces of cheese. So I think the very first step that we need to acknowledge in our dialogue with the West is that this is a positive dialogue based on acknowledgement of people, and it's not based on they have sense of superiority and therefore we have to surrender to them and we have to obey and follow whatever they are doing.
Very good. So we can move from here to the city or
Sure.
Medina. So as you said, we should acknowledge the other. We should know. We should see him as a person, as someone like us, with just some different views, different world views. But we shouldn't forget that it's a human form. So how can a city represent this? For example, a Turkish thinker said to people, that a Muslim city, a Medina, is a place where there is a mosque, there is a synagogue, there is a church living together, but we can identify each one of them different locations in the same location maybe without any clash between. So what's your answer to that? A city representing this acknowledgement and harmony.
Well, I think I would go to the roots of the city, and I would define the city as a sort of an interaction, a genius interaction between people and places, right? So, in my own opinion, those are the two main components of any city: people and places. Now, how this is related to great cities in the world, and definitely Istanbul is one of them. To justify the greatness of cities, you have to go back again to these two components. If a city would celebrate the presence of people coming from every single part of the world, and whenever they are in the city, they feel at home. They will never feel that they are foreigners. They will never feel that they are outsiders. This is a great city.
Yes.
And the second component is places. If the city also can accommodate any form of places that would speak to this diversity of people, then this is also a great city. So I want to sort of expand your argument a little bit and take it not only from the sense of presence of religious building, mosque, church, but I would extend it to whatever people would need, right? Because, like for instance, I know that Istanbul is brilliantly hosting a lot of people coming from Iraq and from Syria and so on and so forth. Now, this is very interesting because with the presence of people coming from Iraq or from Syria, their notion of neighborhood, for instance, their notion of a house, their notion of how they would get together, their notion of a public space, how they use public space, how they use places for children, how women are getting together. So, again, if the city would give them a window of hope regarding practicing their way of life, regarding having the sense that we left home but we came to another home, I think again I would suggest that this is an excellent sign of a great city. So I would conclude by suggesting that we need to go back to the main concepts of the city, people and places, and examine the greatness of cities according to this, how it is accommodating people coming from radically, in some cases radically different cultural backgrounds. And then the second dimension is how places are diversified in a sense that would literally accommodate the different activities, the different aspirations, the different relation between people and spaces and places.
Today we have a modern world and we have modern cities. For example, someone from Japan, someone from America can go to Japan, China, England, France, Belgium, Holland. All of these places he can, for Istanbul also, he will feel at home because these are all modern cities. So I think there is a difference between your idea of city, great city, and the modern city, because the modern city makes all the differences one. There is no difference, but the city, your idea of city is Peking is another city, Beijing is another city, Tokyo is another city, Istanbul is another city, New York, London is another city. They are all different, but they are all homes for everyone. But they are all not all the same, looking same. Is that right? There, the thing.
Well, you know what? This is a very interesting point, and I will use a good example to shed light on exactly what I meant. What is the difference between a mall and a souk? A mall, a commercial mall, right?
Okay.
I heard that they have a huge mall now in Istanbul called Mall of Istanbul. Right? I would say that the mall, as part of the fabric of the city, is a component where you can find it, as you said, you can find it in any city in the world. You can find it in Tokyo, you can find it in New York, you can find it in Paris, and so on and so forth. But the souk is so distinguished to a specific city.
Souk meaning bazaar.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So what I'm trying to say is that when I'm talking about the relation between people and places, I am not talking about unifying this relation. I'm not talking about the modern kind of model of buildings and cities that we have a specific prototype, we have a specific image, and to be labeled as a modern city, we have to use this image or we have to use this model and spread it all over the world.
Not standardized.
This process of standardization ended up with that the slogan that was raised by a lot of thinkers and architects in the 60s, less is more, is becoming now less is bore. So I am saying that if we keep on repeating a specific prototype, a specific image, we will end up with boring cities, and we will lose the flavor, the taste, the personality, the characteristics of our locality. I am suggesting that each city should look at its local story, should focus on its local narrative. And in the process of doing that, you still have the full right to look globally and to see how you can learn from the West, how you can learn from the global process. But first, you have to understand your local story.
Okay.